Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Leadership Book of the Month. Kelly Byrnes here with Bret Getzel and Jim Vaselopulos. And we're so excited to have you with us, Jim, the author of the book Clarity. We are going to dive into that in just a minute. Bret, great to see you. Do you want to do an update, an introduction and an update?
Sure. Thank you. Good to see everybody. Thank you. We had a pause, I think, in there, didn't we? A month, Kelly, where we skipped. Yeah, exactly. So it's been a lot's happened, I guess, in those last 2 months.
Yeah.
Again, as Kelly said, Bret Getzel, C-level space in the food service supply chain business is really what I do. I connect national chain accounts, restaurant operators, food service distributors with basically protein stuff that's from all over the United States, all over the world for that matter, but have a great business, have just a tremendous amount of fun bringing value to those chain accounts. And I could go on and list all the names and you'd know most of them. So really an exciting career that I've got. One of the things that's interesting that I always like to share is what happened over the last 2 months since we've been together last. I was at an event and the keynote speaker was Craig Culver, one of the founders of the Culver restaurant chain. And with a guy like that who's got that pedigree, that experience, he just has to stand there and talk about himself, really completely off the cuff, no notes, unscripted. This is my story. And he started back at, him and his family, what they did in Wisconsin and tried restaurants and failed. And then, how their dad was so entrepreneurial and how they had a passion for service and really just a phenomenal story. Believe it or not, Culver's is quickly approaching 1,000 restaurants in the United States. I wasn't quite aware of that till he shared that story with us, but he ended his keynote, which I think is the point of why I'm bringing this up, about business as a rule, and particularly the hospitality business, just simply being about people. And he shared a couple closing comments in his keynote about some people that had really left an impression on him and people that he had seen grow and achieve great things, and how their model actually enables people to really start from the bottom of the organization, whether that's back of the house, front of the house, and ultimately become store managers and regional managers and owners through their model. And it's a very empowering model. We see that a lot in franchise development with managing partners in the restaurant space. But I go on and on and on. But obviously, he left a great positive impression on me, had time for autographs and photographs and all those kind of things. And just a wonderfully approachable person. And, that's so often the case with these people that are phenomenally successful entrepreneurs. Just common people. If you were to run into him at Walmart and didn't know who he was, you might mistake him for somebody that works there. Just a phenomenal guy, and I can't imagine what his net worth is after all these days. But the message here, business is just simply about people.
Yeah, and that comes up so often in the books that we read and in the leaders that we talk to and the authors. And shout out to Culver so we can tag him when we do our summary. And,
there we go.
Yeah, hear some thoughts from him. That would be really good. Jim, welcome to our broadcast. We're excited to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
What have you been up to for the last 2 months?
Last 2 months, I've been shipping kids all over the country. We had our daughter graduate from college and she moved out to Dallas. And then our son quit his job in Chicago, and then he started grad school in Portland at the University of Oregon. And so we were getting kids out of where they were and into their new places. And so the summer is over, we're settled down, and we were thankful that we got it like kind of a bonus summer this summer with the kids. We didn't think we'd have another one. So we really enjoyed it. And then it was really busy moving them all over creation.
Wow. And you'll have good places to visit.
Yes, we do.
Cool. That's great.
Yeah.
We are excited to talk with you. This is our 33rd conversation. So, Bret, we're on our 3-year anniversary. We started together in September of 21, and then we did 2 books that year together. And so pretty exciting journey that we're on. And this whole thing is all about helping leaders of tomorrow who invest in themselves today. And so I've talked about it as whether you read the books or you come to meet the author or hear what our thoughts are about the book, you're going to learn something and improve as a leader, no matter where you are in your leadership journey. And so that's what we are here to talk about today. So we love so many things about this book, but let me do a little introduction about it first. So it's called Clarity, Business Wisdom to Work Less and Achieve More. And all of those words are important. It was published just over a year ago. September of 23. And congratulations, you just won an award, the New York City Big Book Award in the category of business motivational. So
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. That was quite a surprise. I didn't expect that. So that was nice. Thank you.
Yeah, that was really good to see. I saw that on LinkedIn. I think that was great.
Yeah.
And Jim and I are both in the Forbes Coaches Council, so we have that in common. And as Jim is a C-level executive with a proven record as a rainmaker and new business development expert. So he has that in common with Bret. And he also has a reputation for principled leadership, strategic vision, and effective execution. He's built successful entrepreneur enterprises and turned around underperforming organizations. So between Bret and me, we both have a lot in common with you in the different journeys that we've had and different things that we've done over the years. Been a consultant and entrepreneur at heart, started companies, managed partnerships, participated in several well-orchestrated exits. I think this bio I pulled from the Forbes Coaches Council page where they summarized your book. His company now is called Rafti Advisors. Here it's raftiadvisors.com. So if you want to check it out, if you're watching the broadcast, he is a sought-after executive coach focusing on leadership, business development, communication, and professional development. Frequent speaker on those topics and on networking and innovation. We do talk about education because Bret and I know each other from his MBA, where I was one of his professors. So Jim is a graduate from the University of Illinois with a BS in mechanical engineering. So your career is so interesting to have started there, and not just for a year or two, for quite a few years. And then an MBA from Marquette. So love the Jesuit school. And Jim hosts the leadership podcast you should check out with his friend Jan. So shout out to Jan Rutherford. And let's see, what else was I going to share? Oh, I loved in here you talk about, I think near the beginning, somewhere you talk about your grades, and you didn't go into what they were, but I know that they weren't horrible because you wouldn't be where you are, but that you had more of a curiosity about people than about how the engineering was working in school. The one where you were doing a project and you sat near the trash can to get green and white paper. The description of the green and white paper was hilarious to me. So some of our young friends will have to maybe look that up. But we had that in common as well, where I was more curious about those people as well. Jim volunteers regularly with veterans groups and business incubators. And he used several of our favorite books in his book. So if you've been with us for a while, we talked to earlier this year about the wisdom of the bullfrog. We started this year with Dan Pink's The Power of Regret, which we love. And the very first book that Bret and I did together was Influence from Robert Cialdini. And we loved this one, and we talk about it still. And you refer to that many times. And you brought up Ann Latham, and we're going to do The Power of Disconnect for our December book. So
it's a great book.
Yeah.
Did we lose her? Is Kelly locked up?
Kelly's locked up.
Oh, well, good. Here, we'll get caught up here. We'll just turn it over to you for right now. I think that's kind of what was next up here in the queue was for you to tell us a little bit about you, other than what Kelly obviously shared, and then what got us to the point where you said, you know what, there's a need or a want in the space for a book like this. When Kelly and I do this, we do a pregame the day prior, and one of the books that we covered was Indra Nooyi's book.
So that we can go into the... Sorry about that. I think I froze. I had too many windows open. But I was saying I wanted to stop talking, and the system made me stop talking. So anything else?
Yeah, we were talking about Indra Nooyi, and she she opens her book. She starts talking about, hey, I started to write a book. And she said the book that I was writing, it had already been written. And so she backed up and punted all over again and said, hey, let's write a completely different book. And so that was my segue to you, Jim, to say, hey, did you identify a want or a need for a book? And obviously, given the awards that the book has won, rightly so, I'm just curious of how you got to the place and then focused and dialed in on the content.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think even back like shortly after college, I thought, maybe I'd like to write a book someday. That was always kind of in the back of my head. And, I was an engineer in manufacturing, and I thought I'd write a manufacturing book or something about some expertise that I was developing. And I have like pages written in file folders that, are never, won't see the light of day again. As I developed kind of the back half of my career, I call like I'm on the back nine now. And, I had built and sold some companies. So I was like, I'm just going to help other people at this point. And maybe it's time to kind of codify some of the things I've learned. And people either told me like, oh, Jim, you do so much work with leadership in the podcast. You should write a leadership book. And I was like, okay, that sounds pretty good. Then I was like, I've read so many leadership books. I don't know if I have a lot more to add. Any new insights, I'm just going to rehash stuff. And then, people said, well, you should write a sales book because, I love your approach on sales. Your sales training is great. You should write a book on sales. And I thought, there's something there, but I had read enough sales books to be like, there's nothing too different or new. And then, what I really wanted to do over time was like, what is it that I do with people that people value, and how can I articulate that in such a way so that someone could, learn how to do it? Because, it's one thing to say like, I got good at something, whether coaching or being a business advisor, then just say, look, why is it that I'm good? And I'd love to be able to get to the point where I have, what I would call conscious competence, so that I can say, here, it's written down, so you could do this yourself. Now, whether people would do it the same way I do it or not is, it's their choice. But this is how I kind of think through the process to get people to where they can think better. And I thought that's unique. That's a little bit different. People write books on slivers of things I've talked about, but I haven't seen many books. There are a lot of books with the title Clarity in there, but I haven't seen many books from a business standpoint that say, here's where to look. Like, here is the next book to read. But, let me look and assess the problem that I'm dealing with so that I can say, okay, this is a problem I have to deal with, this particular aspect of running my business. And so I just think this is a good book to help people understand what is the real core problem they're having, where to maybe focus some time and attention with the whatever scarce resources we've got, whether it's money or time, to allocate that towards the thing which is going to have that which will have the greatest impact on your business. And at the end of the day, that's what I decided to do. And I'm happy because I kind of did this stuff by feel before. I kind of knew what to say and do. And it's through the process of writing a book and really putting it down on paper that you get to the point where it's like, okay, everything has to tie out really nice. And even the way we kind of wrote the book with stories, like the stories have to tie out nice. So you can't have holes in your logic. You can't have holes in your approach. And so I just think like it made me better. And, if that's the only benefit I get out of the book, fantastic. No one even has to read it. I hope people do, but it served its purpose for me. And I'm thrilled with that.
Yeah, doing my research and background on you, I came across one of your posts today that was about symptoms, and it had 4 different areas, and it kind of ties into exactly what you're talking about. The other part that I really like where you took this was getting things to a process. It's one thing to just be that natural born leader who can fly by the seat of their pants and they always end up in the good space. It's another thing to be process driven and how you manage problem solving, identifying the core root, the symptoms, and going through that. But yeah, just really like the fact that, and that's probably the engineering side of your background, saying, if it's a process, it can be repeatable, it can be predictable, it can be controllable. So I love that approach.
Yeah. And to Kelly's earlier question, my grades were that bad. They started off freshman year. I was actually kind of smart. I was doing okay. And then, what I didn't realize is that they fail out like half the class after the first semester, and then another half, and then another half. By the time I got into sophomore year, I was like one of the dumbest guys in the whole program. Now, I was like, I always tell people I was the wrong amount of smart, because if I had been less smart, I would have gotten out quicker and gone into the business school. But I was the wrong amount of smart because I was smart enough to stay in long enough that it was too late to get out. So, and I've got a funny story that I had with the dean of the engineering school when I was trying to like talk my way into the business school. And let's just say at this point, I got maybe 3/4 of the way through the discussion. I realized I was not getting out. And I just looked at him, and almost like that Tom Cruise kind of mentality. And I just said, looks like I'm going to be an engineer. So I got out. I landed that plane on fire.
Good for you.
Yeah, and it worked out. It's that mentality serves you well.
Yeah.
You know, all of those things. That's pretty funny. That's good. So the first part of the book talks about the symptoms and the temptation of just figure out what the symptoms are. You know, I just see what the problem is, and that's what we do. People just see what the problem is, and then I brainstorm the problem, and then which one is the most important one to fix, and then come up with solutions for it. But then when I look at it, that's not really what the problem is. So I'm a consultant too, as you know. And so I do this similar things that what you talked about. My process is similar, but your book will help me go deeper. I added some notes to my own work. So even though the general process was the same, there were some ways to fine tune what how I do my work. But I think that would be a great point to share with people about the symptoms, about why it is important to not succumb to that temptation to stop there.
Yeah, I tried to, parallel this with kind of medical symptoms, because everyone understands like medical symptoms. You got like fever, you've got all kinds of different issues that you might be dealing with. But in the grand scheme of things, when we apply it to business, people often lose that kind of connection. And so I try and tie it into things like that. Like, in this really gets back to kind of the training I got as an engineer, is like really define the problem well, understand the problem well. What are the boundaries? What are the questions you need to ask yourself before you just say, like, oh, this must be the problem. So like a classic example is like conflict. Oh, we got conflict. So what should we do? Conflict management training. Let's just conflict management training. And conflict isn't the problem. Okay. Right. That's just like a Band-Aid. Like conflict is bad, but it's an underlying symptom. It's like left arm pain. If I just said, I have pain in my left arm and it really hurts bad. The reality is, you're probably, the problem isn't your left arm. The problem could be your heart. So we probably should get to the bottom of this thing. But in conflict's the same way. And so, I could treat it with aspirin. I could treat it with a cold compress, but the reality is that's not going to solve the root cause. And so there are a lot of these things that we characterize as problems, but they're really symptoms. And I'd say that the difference is they're outcomes. Okay. Like fever isn't the problem. Fever is an outcome. Yeah. If I have some other medical condition, like, hey, I have, inflammation, that is an outcome of something deeper. Well, being too busy is an outcome of not that you're too busy. You have a deeper problem. Either it's, could be that you're saying yes to too many things and you don't have a good limitation on what you're doing, or it, could be time management. It might not be. It usually isn't, but that's usually, oh, we're so busy. We need better time management. Well, if you're saying yes to everything, more time management isn't going to help. And being too busy is sometimes, really because you don't want to get to the root cause of problems and you're constantly playing whack-a-mole instead of saying like, how do we prevent these, whack-a-moles from coming up all the time, solve them in the first place? And so most of these things are outcomes and they're symptomatic of deeper problems. And what I encourage people to do is like, that's fine. A symptom is good. Left arm pain is good. It tells you something's there. Don't stop digging, dig deeper. And if you go deeper, you can find the root cause. And if you can address the root cause, then you can make real progress.
Yeah, the two things that come to mind as I'm listening to that are the 5 whys, right? We've trained a lot of young managers and executives in that process. And then I just came across a quote, which isn't new, the Steve Jobs quote of saying, I'm proud of what we've done, but I'm equally proud of all the things that we said no to, just exactly the same things that you mentioned there, Jim.
Yeah, absolutely. And we mentioned the 5 whys in the book. I mean, there's nothing really new. It's just, in all these books, I mean, like, leadership books, especially, it's like, there's nothing new. And, for the podcast, we read a lot of books too. And so we're reading books all the time and there's nothing new. They're just packaged differently. And, the packaging changes with the times, because like if we were to read, it's like, who wanted to read Shakespeare as a kid because you can't understand Old English. But if, you might read Romeo and Juliet and go like, oh my gosh, that's, not Romeo and Juliet, West Side Story, and go, oh, that's more relevant. It's the same story. It's just more relevant because I understand it and it's more deep, connects with me more. And so much of all these books are like, if it's just written in a way that connects with people and allows them to say like, oh yeah, I get this now. Well, it's just like the difference between two teachers you might have had in school. One teaches the class in a way that you can digest, and the other one, you can't understand what they're saying.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I recognize sometimes when I can tell an author has read Stephen Covey or Brian Tracy or some of the authors from 20 and 30 years ago, and they'll just use almost exactly the same concepts and just change the names. So
yeah.
But you ask yourself why, right? And the reason is, the concepts stand the test of time.
Right.
Covey's work is still extremely widely quoted. I mean, even Dale Carnegie's work. I mean, you think how old that is. Look at the Zig Ziglar books. I mean, some of these things are still table stakes. I just looked at one the other day. The Barbarians at a Gate was classical reading for an MBA student. I mean, there's just some of these things, like I said, they will stand the test of time. Yeah. I'm in the middle of 4DX. I don't know if you've read that one, Jim, or not, but some of these entrepreneur, I would certainly recommend it. It definitely has relevance to what you're talking about. But and I was talking to Kelly about that, of where that might fit with an MBA coursework, whether it was strategic leadership or management or one of those senior level type capstone classes. But, we have each one of these components that all group together form a degree content, but there's really not one overarching class other than the capstone that kind of brings it all together. And understanding how to ultimately run a business, whether it's an entrepreneur or bootstrap or going into a company that's well established and well formed. She and I even talked about this the other day, right? You don't come into a job and know how to do those things. Either you get good coaching, good training, or mentoring. And some of these bigger companies, I think Kelly, or you mentioned you got great training at Sprint. I worked for a Fortune 500 company at Seaboard Corporation, and we had executive level coaching. They paid for MBA coursework. We're all a product of our education, our environment, our training, and our mentors.
Yeah, and one of the things is we talk about, let's say, books that had an influence on us. One of the things that, I kind of did differently was just like, what are all the things, whether it's, if I go back in the catalog of podcasts I've listened to or done, or if I go back and listen to the books, and let's just take, Cialdini's book, Influence, like, one of the best business books of all time. I don't remember anything specific, but I remember the psych experiments, like, the psych experiment of like, how you can get to the front of the line, waiting to make copies or something like that. I mean, the stories are what you remember. And if you take a look at, let's say, a book like, the 5 dysfunctions of a team, it's a story and it's really powerful. Right. And so I was like, I took like that thing out of all these books, the ones like that I really made me remember them. And I said, I want to weave a story or stories into these books, because the stories are what you remember. And I just, want that to be resident with people. And so the one thing I have kind of found, and this was a delight, it wasn't an expectation, because this was kind of like a weird format, was that when people ask me questions about the book, they always ask me about the characters. They never really asked me about a concept, like, some acronym or something like that. I said, I don't remember, like, I can remember like, oh, this person had an acronym and it spelled this. What do they stand for? And you're like, I don't remember.
Right.
But, if people say like, oh, I really connected with Diana when she said this, or with Sam when he did this, or, and that to me is like, okay, I want to do something that sticks. And, granted, I'm not writing a New York Times bestseller or anything like that, but the reality is like that worked. And I'm really pleased with that.
Yeah.
So you're a coach, you're a consultant, you work with industry companies. We asked each other, were these characters with the names were changed to protect the innocent kind of thing, or were these actually fictional characters that you built the stories around? We're dying to know this one.
No, it's an excellent question. And so originally I was just going to do case studies with, people and change the names to protect the innocent. And but here's, so there's a professor at the University of Chicago, Dr. James Schrager, who does like MBA classes on strategy and stuff like that. Great guy. He's been very kind to me and given me a lot of advice through the years. And he's big on case studies. Like the way we learn is through case studies. And that's like, standard MBA program. Mm-hmm. And what I always never liked about case studies was there was like always like, this is a case study on growth, or this is a case study on cash management, or and it always channeled you towards one thing. And the problem I have with that is in business, it's never that simple. It's always like 5 things going wrong at the same time. And so I wanted to really bring that forward. And so I had some individual experiences of my own and of other people and people I was actually coaching at the time. And I thought I want to kind of leverage those, and they're originally going to be after people. But then it just got complicated because it became an amalgam of people, and it was like multiple things going on. So they really, with the exception of, I'll say Diana, there's a lady, she knows who she is. And I told her she was my Diana. And I really, what her problem was really similar to that, where it came down to, at the end of the day, spoiler here, it was like leadership was her issue. And until she like really wanted to put that cloak on and like really lean into being a leader, then all of a sudden all her problems disappeared, which was fantastic. But, there are some similarities, but it's different enough that it's like, it's not really her, but I call her my muse. She was my inspiration.
Yeah. Sure.
Yeah.
And so was that true about her grandfather at the end?
No.
Because it made me teary. Because I had a grandfather that was very influential to me in business, and my dad too. So I got teary. I didn't sob, but I got teary reading that.
Well, I am so glad that you did. So what's really funny is, so I was like writing the story, and I came up with this like true north, and I was never going to define it. I was like, I'll just leave it. No, why define it? And I was like, that's kind of really lame. You throw this thing out there as this true north guidance principle that's guiding all our decisions. I never actually say what it is. And I honestly didn't know what it was going to be. And I didn't even know that I was going to bring things together the way I did. And then I sat down one day and it just came to me. And I just wrote that entire chapter in like one morning. And it was just like, I was like, wow, and it just sounds so lame. And I'm going to get, people are going to watch this and be like, just like, you're kind of a jerk. But I was just like, I read that and I was like, I think this is good.
Did any particular thing inspire you, or, it just came to you in the moment?
The only thing that inspired me was the cabin out in Michigan.
Okay.
Because I had been to a cabin like that as a child. And I always just like thought it was like this peaceful place, and this place where like really of solitude, where you could gather your thoughts. And I thought, wow, what a wonderful setting. And I've always loved that, it was like, gosh, I just love that. And so I was like, I could describe it very richly in my head. And I think when you want to describe something and get people's emotions going, the more you can be descriptive of something, the more you're invested in it. So I was like, I can write about that place with a great deal of emotion. And so if you can do that, then you can bring out the emotion of the story. But yeah, I have no idea how it all came together. I feel like that was almost like some kind of divine inspiration, because I was like, wow, that tied it up really nice.
Well, and what's interesting is I was reading the book and going through I call them the case studies or the examples, however you want to frame it. Up until the very last part, I wasn't prepared for them to all come together the way they did. It was almost like a cliffhanger or a detective novel, right? Yeah, that's like, oh my gosh, you kind of have that aha moment where it all kind of comes together and it all makes sense there in the end. But I obviously didn't see that coming.
I didn't either. I was keeping track of some questions and stuff along the way, like, oh, okay, I might ask him this. And, I get toward the end and I'm thinking, he better tell us what happens with these people or I'm going to kill him.
Yeah. It's, I'm old school. I like a tight storyline. I like something to come together nice. And so, my intent was to do that, but I wanted it to be a surprise. I wanted it to be like that thing that's just like, okay. And it worked out well. But what I would like about it most is there's a story that's not in the story. And, what I really would love to have people take away, because a lot of people think, business people are like these, especially business CEOs are like, robots that only care about profit or anything like this. The most successful leaders I know care about people. They care about them deeply. And they have rich networks that they leverage, and they care about other people's success, not just their own. And I think it's a really wonderful thing to kind of demonstrate, like, here's how you can have rich business relationships with vendors, with partners. And, if you feel it's incumbent upon you as a leader to help not only be a good custodian and steward of your company's interests, but all the people who you work with and rely upon, then, you're really being a wonderful leader. And so I see more of that than what we see on TV or what you see in the news. I mean, most of the leaders I know are like wonderful people. They're the first people not to take a paycheck when times go bad. And I just said, like, I want to model that because no one sees that, but it's out there. And I just thought, this is the kind of leader people should aspire to be like.
Right.
Well, it's Jack Welch 101, right? You're a leader when you stop worrying about yourself and everything becomes about the people that work with you. And I use that and quote that all the time. And it's interesting seeing people, and I even made a comment to the team the other day that we see people that are great managers that have leadership in their title or leadership in their job description, and they truly never evolve to being what the definition of a leader or are operating at that level. And every organization's got their fair share of those, but I always ask people to think of it in terms of self-reflection, to say, are you a leader? Are you really a manager? And generally, I think if people are honest with themselves, if they've got a high level of self-awareness, they can usually tell.
And the management tasks are important too.
Absolutely.
So I don't like those memes that downplay management because as if cheering somebody on is the only important thing,
Well, think about that. I mean, people naturally associate leadership only in the professional space. And I argue all the time, you may be the leader of your household. You may be the leader of your neighborhood. You may be the leader of your club. You may be the leader on your block. You're a leader in more ways than anybody ever knows. So when we think of the study of leadership only applying to your professional environment, quite the contrary. Everything that we do that's devoted to leadership in the professional space has applications far and wide, and it just touches every aspect. There's no question about it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's if you're a great leader and you can motivate people, inspire people, that's wonderful. That's a gift. But great leaders who have no management skills will get you to drive the car off a cliff into the ocean with a smile on your face, like, wow, I thought this was going great until the very end, and then someone who's a great manager but a terrible leader, you can make you achieve wonderful things, but you hated it. It was awful, and I never want to do that again. I made a lot of money, but boy, it wasn't worth it. And so I look at this and I just say, it's a balance. And I think that's maybe one of the biggest things I want to take out of this book is things are a balance. This is not easy. To try and define these states of hey, this is the way to do it, and to boil everything into the 5 ways to be a great leader, 5 ways to be a great manager. It's just not that simple. It's a delicate balance to kind of achieve these things. And people just have to understand that, you can't just do something and achieve balance and then you're done. Balance is a state you constantly have to manage and you adapt to and adjust to. And I think that is something that people forget because they like to think okay, I've balanced everything. Everything is good. Now I can just look somewhere else. It's no, you are going to fall over and you're going to get hurt if you don't.
Everyone's got a plan until I punch him in the mouth, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So.
I liked what you said about patience too in the book. That struck me similar to what you're just talking about related to balance and time. And patience is not a passive activity.
Patience, I think, is the truest form of confidence. And and that was one that that I don't think I would have been able to articulate it that cleanly and clearly had I not decided to write a book. And I just really enjoy that so much because, if you think about it, go to any war movie. Okay. Where, you got Mel Gibson saying, hold, wait, until the right moment. And, and part of it is why would you do that when all the other people are really, we're waiting. And they're no, it's confidence because you understand the situation well, you understand the problem set well, you understand your capabilities well, and you want to use patience for the optimal impact. And so timing is patience, but really it's not related to effort, it's related to understanding. So the difference between a foul ball and a home run is timing. Same swing, same mechanics, same effort, same strength. It's just, you can hit a foul ball or a home run. And so if you look at any of these situations, it's like you have to be confident in your understanding of the problem, confident in your understanding of your abilities, confident in everything that allows you to say, I will wait for the right pitch or the right time or the right moment to take action. And I think too many times we are just so wired to want to take action immediately instead of just saying like, hold on, wait for it. There's a time and place for this. And you can probably do a lot less work and achieve a lot more if you're just a little bit patient.
Yeah. I heard a leader one time and he literally, I mean, his comment was, hey, choosing to not do something is a choice, right?
Yeah.
Choosing not to act, it's a choice. It's strategic. And to your point, I mean, there's so much value in that patience, and it has to do probably with years of experience and understanding that doing something or doing nothing is actually doing something.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think, Jim, I think that description you just gave is a really good summary for your book, for that whole process, and for the type of clarity that you're talking about, the clarity for the decisions that you're making in life. That's the wisdom to live like that.
Yeah. And, I sit there and I joke with people. I say, like, when I was growing up, everyone's got their idols. And of course you idolize your, sports figures and your parents and stuff like that. But there was one person I idolized that I thought was like, man, most kids probably didn't idolize this person. I just thought Tom Sawyer was the coolest person in the world. Because I watched the movie and, the black and white movie, and I thought Tom Sawyer, I'm like, this guy got all these other kids in the neighborhood to paint the fence, and he just sat back and watched. I'm like, that guy's got something going on. I want to be that guy someday. And, and what it made me appreciate is not that he was lazy, he was clever. And so, what allowed him to be that clever, and I thought, wow, that's just seems like a cool place to be that clever. And so, I joke with people. I tell them I'm, one of the laziest people you ever know. And then people say, no, you're not lazy. You're working all the time. The reality is I'm always trying to figure out like a smarter, better way. I'm always trying to figure out like, hey, could I do this and work a lot less? Could I do this and, be more efficient? And, I just think that it's a mindset. And it's a mindset anyone can adopt, and you don't have to be, a cheat. You're not trying to beat the system. Right. You're just trying to say like, hey, let me question, why am I doing this? Why am I doing this way? Is there a better way to do this? And that has been, the genesis of a lot of my success professionally in corporate America as an entrepreneur, and even now, in my back nine career.
And that's how you can fit so much in, because you look for ways to streamline. You look for how you can do it more efficiently.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And isn't it the Peter principle? The work will expand to fit the time that you allow for it. Is that the Peter principle?
My wife understands that better than I do, because, every time she, I'm like, hey, I just, finished this and I can check this off the list. And she's like, right. I used to be like running 3 companies and 1 nonprofit. And for a while, and it was like, hey, I'm no longer on that board and I'm no longer doing this. And she's like, you'll fill it up with something else. Yeah.
I've been told that as well.
Yeah. We can all relate to that, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's so good. Well, we're nearing our time. What's one more thing you would want the reader or potential reader to know, or give them hope about the possibility of having this clarity? I want people to have hope that they can have this clarity. That's how I felt at the end. Like, you can do this. Like, it takes effort, but it's not painful.
It's not painful. And, if you take something out of this book, fantastic. All I'd encourage everyone to do is keep reading. Okay. Keep learning, never stop learning. And I've seen so many great minds in my life of people with far greater intellect than I ever was given at birth, or, even had through, our education. They're just like, I don't need to learn anymore. I took my last test, I don't need to read any more books. I don't need to do anything else. And that's fine. But I just look at it and I just say, you can accomplish so much, and we are capable of so much more, whether it's like, hey, I don't think I can run a marathon. So, I'm going to train, and, the Navy SEALs will tell you like, your limitations physically are in your head. Well, your limitations in life are in your head. And so I just say, like, continue to learn, whether it's my book or someone else's book or Kelly's book, just like continue to learn, because the world needs people who can change it for the better, and everyone's got the capacity, and all you need to do is have the desire. And if my book is one of those things that gives someone the confidence that they could be that person to do more, fantastic. If it's not my book and it's someone else's, fantastic. Just, don't look at it and just say, oh, that's for other people to do.
Yeah. And you do talk about confidence in here. I already recommended it to a couple of people that some senior level men that I've coached recently about that needed a confidence boost. So I encourage them to read it for that perspective. Yeah. Thank you so much. Bret, what about you? Last thought.
I just 2 comments, right? And Jim, I don't know if you've seen any of our previous podcasts, but you hit on many of the themes. So I don't know if that's good validation or just coincidence, but I'll take the former rather than the latter. We always end each conversation with would we recommend the book, and kind of a throwback to Siskel and Ebert. I would highly recommend this book. And it's got a broad appeal to junior leaders, senior leaders, just virtually anybody. And I always look for a book where the message and the content, it's relatable. I don't want to say it's a breezy read, but it's an easy read. So for someone who's not really into the highly academic or the highly overly cerebral books, this is one that you can pick up. I was halfway through the book in the middle of the month, and I sometimes I connect with Kelly. Sometimes we don't, just based on our schedule, and I couldn't help it. I had to send her an email, and I said, I'm halfway through Clarity, and I said, I can't put it down. And I can tell you, we don't read rockstar books all the time. We will find one eventually that we just like, oh my gosh, I got through it, but that's about all I can say about it. This isn't one of those, folks. This is one that if you have the time, pick it up. It'll definitely be worth the time you invest.
Thank you.
And my thought on that, I totally agree. I would recommend it for all of those things, and also for people who didn't get an MBA or didn't major in business. I think it's fantastic for people, if you are an engineer and you are managing projects and teams and you want to understand the business side, a couple hours with this book, you'll be heads and tails above other people that don't understand the business as well. So engineer, architect, creative person, anybody, healthcare. So somebody that's in healthcare that needs to understand the business side. I thought you did that wasn't the intention of it, but I thought you did great insight for anybody to understand the business, how a business runs, like more of the nitty gritty of that. I thought that was fantastic. And I loved your word choice. Love so many clever word choices in there. I didn't circle them all, but so not academic. It was, very smart, very clever word choices in there.
I really appreciate that. There's small little things that say, oh, I liked your book, but like that one, I like that. Thank you. I really appreciate your recommendations and your interest in the book. It's just so much joy you've brought to me today. Thank you.
Yay.
Oh, you're welcome.
I want to recommend that you look at Mark Morgenstern's book, The Soul of the Deal. It reminded me of that, if you haven't read his, or connect with him too. The very end of the book of Clarity says, the clear path forward is not always easy to see, but it is there. It's paved with the soul, creativity, and love we all possess in abundance. And I just think that's the most beautiful thing to say in a book that's about business wisdom. So it's business wisdom, and this is about getting a lot done and accomplishing big things. And it comes down to the soul and love and all those things too. So that's clarity of living in alignment with who you are. And that's the best. So, yeah.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. Beautiful, 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 beautiful. So our next book hopefully will be as beautiful, but it's a little different. Before I was CEO, and this one has a bunch of stories, life stories and lessons from leaders before they reach the top. So this does have some interesting stories from CEOs of companies and organizations that you've heard of. So that'll be November 21st, so right around the corner. And December's book is one that that Bret and I both have, and I didn't grab it, but it's from Ann Latham, Disconnect Principles. So we are going to talk about that. And Jim mentioned it in his book as well. So
absolutely.
we're going to talk tackle that one. And it's a good one to end the year on before the holidays, I think. That's
Absolutely. Great book.
Yeah, I think that will be fun. So I think that is all for us for today. So Jim, thank you for joining us. We appreciate the book. We appreciate you today and sharing. And I'll send any comments or questions anybody has. I did peek a couple times and didn't see anything, but if anybody does, I'll send them your way. And
Thank
Bret,
you.
as always, thank you for joining
My
me
pleasure.
and sharing. And we'll
Yeah,
look forward
we
to
always end with the same thing, why, and it's the why, right? We got a couple of books into this thing, and Kelly and I, we had to kind of sit down. We didn't build a mission statement and a vision statement, but we said, what's our why? And we just came up with what we thought was reasonably catchy. I don't know if it's that unique or not, but it's, we're doing this so that the leaders of tomorrow will continue to invest in themselves today. And Buffett's got this thing that he always talks about, that investing in yourself is the best investment you'll ever make. It's free and it's not taxable. So Jim kind of hit on that note. And as I said, it's as if you've watched several of our podcasts, several of our conversations, because the themes are very similar. And again, really, really thank you for your time. Really enjoyed our time together.
Yeah,
Thank you. I'm honored.
Thank you all. Thank you for watching, everyone. Enjoy the book. Enjoy the rest of your day. See you soon.